This hour, American and coalition forces are in the early stages of military operations to disarm Iraq. Major combat operations in Iraq have ended. In the Battle of Iraq, the United States and our allies have prevailed.
It would be a terrible mistake to think that Iraq is a fully secure, fully pacified environment. It is not.
United States military forces captured Saddam Hussein alive.
We're involved in an insurgency, a very violent insurgency.
After nearly 9 years, America's war in Iraq will be over.
Well, the future of Iraq today is now indeterminate, in large part because of the botched occupation, where we tried not just to change the government, but the army, the police, the coinage, the currency, everything. The model was Nazi Germany, but that was leveled in rubble, so we had our way. Ironically, the initial toppling of the Saddam government was so economical, so efficient, historically so discriminating, that it left Iraq essentially intact, and we did not have our way. But then there was another turning point, which was the surge, which was the finest moment of the Bush administration. Democrats opposed it almost unanimously, and it restored Iraq, it redeemed the effort, it defeated the insurgency, it decimated al-Qaeda in Iraq, and it created the conditions for stability. And then the worst irony is that Obama was handed one task alone. The war had been won on the ground, to preserve the gains by negotiating an agreement to leave behind a residual force, to mediate between the sects, to train the army, and to exert American influence. And that would have left us with Iraq as a strategic ally in the region. And Obama botched it. He did not. He was not successful. He delegated it to the vice president. It was a failure. And as a result, Iraq is now out of our hands. We have no influence, at great sacrifice. And I think that's sort of the most ironic tragedy of them all.
Today there was an exchange between James Rosen and Jay Carney at the White House, in which eventually Carney said that George W. Bush was to be credited for taking out Saddam Hussein, along with the U.S. military who were there, obviously. Is there an issue in looking back and seeing the good in Iraq, talking about it?
Look, the good is unmistakable. The Saddam regime, the dynasty with his sons, was the cruelest on the planet. It was a sadistic government, and it was also the most aggressive, starting wars on all fronts, attacking all this, and it's gone. And Iraq now is not a threat. It's not exactly democratic, but it's not the hell that the Saddam Iraq was, and that is an undeniable advance. The problem is, for Americans, the sacrifice was huge and tragic, and the strategic advantage which we had hoped to gain, to have something of an ally in Iraq, I think was squandered at the end of the surge.
He's really running out of time, and this chemical weapons thing, he will be under tremendous pressure from the Israelis this week when he's with them to tell them the truth and to act on his threat of the red line.
But it isn't only the Israelis. The fact is that Obama, his word is at stake here. He uses the words red line, unacceptable, intolerable, and he said in relation with chemical weapons. If they are used and he does nothing, then his word means nothing abroad, and that is one of the most important elements of American strength. And it relates to Iran, where he's also said, intolerable, unacceptable, it's a red line. Who will believe him if he doesn't act in this case?
The President and the Minister of Finance were absolutely clear that this approach would have very detrimental effects on the economy.
This is a lose-lose situation for us. There is absolutely no guarantee that even if we do pass this bill, we won't have a bank run tomorrow morning, because I believe that the credibility of our banking system has been totally being destroyed.
Have market impacts, obviously, if it goes beyond Cyprus.
And look, if you have a loss of faith throughout Europe in the safety of your deposits, then we really have a problem on our hands as Americans. But what's so hard to understand is Cyprus is a tiny country. It's 1 million people. The amount of money here is trivial, $6 billion. in a continent with, trillion, 16, 20 trillion dollars worth of an economy. And in order to recoup that amount of money, it decides to undermine faith people have in their deposits. It's as if here it was declared that, yes, you have safety deposit insurance. However, we're going to take 10% of your savings tomorrow. It'll disappear. And that will cause a run on the banks. And it's like Sarajevo. This is a very small country, a very small incident, but it could be a long fuse.
Back here in the States, California has this deal, a 50% tax break for small businesses and startups, that taxpayers, they got a letter saying they're no longer able to take that. Even if they took it over the past 5 years, now they have to pay that up. Take a listen to this, Jason.
How would you feel if you made a decision 4 years ago that you absolutely knew was legally correct, and 4 years later a governing body came in and said, no, it's not correct, now you owe us a bunch more money, and we're going to charge you interest on money that you didn't even know you owed?
It's not Cyprus, but it's extreme. Okay, Charles?
I think we do have to revise our doomsday pronouncements. We had been saying up to now America's headed the way of Greece. I would say it's headed the way of Cyprus. Because if you start to confiscate people's money retroactively, you got a real problem on your hands. And I think if you put it to a vote for the people of that state, you get the same result that you got today in Cyprus in the parliament, where nobody, not a single member of the parliament, supported an agreement that the government itself had proposed. The government party, not one of them voted yes. It abstained entirely on a proposal that it had agreed to. So that tells you how unpopular it is.
This has been a Sunfish production.